we never talked this seriously, so tonight's the night, I think.
Never. We've only talked in bars.
Just tell me about your belief in God and your exact religion and what you feel.
It's early. Let's get a couple more drinks in us. How you guys doing? Good. We didn't script anything, so I'm sorry in advance. It's a complete letdown.
Yeah, no, we're not good at it. That's why we make records. Yeah. We used to hide, by the way, not being in front of people like this talking.
Yeah, that's the double life, you know. It's pretty nice. We should talk about that, though. We should talk about why we chose to get into it in the first place. So
I'm going to go with you first. Why did you get into it?
Okay.
You like that? I'm just going to defer every question to you.
Well, I got into it because I couldn't afford a producer or a studio in Atlanta. I grew up in Cartersville, Georgia, and I bought like a $200 Tascam 4-track, and just kind of learned on my own how to multi-track and do the drums and then the bass and the guitar, and just kind of haphazardly got my way through it, and realized I could get around on it pretty good and get around in a recording setup, you know, as long as it wasn't too complicated. But that ended up being the impetus of producing for me, because I had to just do it myself because nobody else was around to show me how or to help me do it, because it was very expensive back then. There weren't computers. This was like 1947. And so there wasn't any computers, and if you wanted to make a record, instead of just having a laptop where you can make something sound like the radio, which is pretty much everything on the radio is made on a laptop now. Not everything, but most. And then, you know, you had to go into a big studio that was very, very expensive day rate. You had to pay an engineer. So I just took it upon myself. And I remember I would get paid like $200 a day by local bands, and I would make their records for them in my dad's garage. And which is going to be a similar story, I'm sure, for you. But it was cool because
you got $200.
Yeah, $200 a day, man.
I wasn't smart enough to do that.
Was I overpaid?
Yeah, no, under.
All right. But I would just end up making these guys records, and that's how I learned everything. And cut to, this is a good story, I guess, to go into how I started getting calls to make records. Was a beautiful, beautiful soul named Leslie Fram, who...
That's the reason why we're both here.
Right?
We're both here because of her. Atlanta's own, yeah.
Program director at 99X in Atlanta during its heyday in the 90s, and just really turned that station into something special when alternative rock really hit. And my band was playing around with your band. We were we were playing around the Atlanta circuit all the time. I had discovered this software called Pro Tools. It was a very archaic version of it that at the time, I remember I cobbled up whatever I could get to buy a used system that was down at the local music store that had belonged to like some R&B group called Silk, I think. And
I like Silk.
When I got it, it still had like, you know, background vocals on the hard drive, you know.
Is that where you learn your tricks from?
That's how I learned how to sing, man. And
Silk is bad as a bone.
Yeah. And I ended up actually just learning it while I would sit there and go through the manual while sitting in the passenger seat of the van on tour, and just kind of learning whatever I could, because I didn't even know how to run a computer at the time, and I had to learn a Mac right away, which was like this giant like Star Wars box at the time, you know. And I recorded a record in my living room of this house I was squatting at, actually, and I ended up making a whole record with one microphone, one 2-channel mic preamp, no compressor, no nothing, and I did the whole thing in there, and I thought it sounded pretty good, and I couldn't really get anybody to listen to it because our band was interesting at the time. I guess we were into wearing women's clothes, and I had more makeup on than my sister, and it was like a little hard to digest, I think, at the time for a lot of the industry, but I thought the songs were good, And
your band was Twisted Sister, right?
it was Twisted Sister. Yeah. Yes. So, but we had like, you know, we had this touring base, and we'd go out and play a lot, and we had a good fan base starting to build. But there was this one song on there, and I remember I played it for Jace, my bass player at the time, and I said, this is kind of the throwaway song that it sounds like an obvious trying to have a hit song. And because for some reason I was against that at the time. I don't know why. But it was called Freak of the Week, and Jace said, man, that song sounds like a hit. And I was like, whatever. I didn't even really care about it, which is weird because I love the song now. I'm really proud of it. But at the time I was kind of just dismissive because I was trying to be too smarty pants for my own good with my songwriting and all that. And I remember walking it in to play it for Steve Craig, who I love to death also, who was one of the DJs at 99X. You remember Steve?
Of course, yeah.
Great guy. He had the Locals Only show, which supported local music. He was one of the really, really big supporters of the local scene in Atlanta, which was seminal. And he listened to 30 seconds of that song in his cubicle. I walked up and gave it to him to get it played on the Sunday night, midnight, show. And he just got up and walked right into Leslie's office, which I thought was pretty bold. I was like, what are you doing? And he goes, come in here. And he gave it to her, put it on, played it, and she said, well, I think that song's a hit, and if you don't mind, I want to start playing it on the radio. And I was just like, don't be fucking with me. I've been waiting my whole life to have something happen. I need a break, And it started getting played the next day, and we were getting turned down by every record label in the country for months and months trying to get signed. And then after she started playing that song, the same record companies were coming back and offering whatever we wanted. And so cut to being a top 5 hit at Modern Rock Alternative, and the phone started ringing because people said, who produced that? And I said, well, I did. Who engineered it? I did, in my underwear mostly. And then, and so they said, who wrote the song? I'm like, well, I did. I mean, just kind of did it, and my band played it, and it's all there. And so they ended up starting to call, wanting me to make records for other artists at the time, and that was that was the beginning of the end of the beginning.
Well, I copied you. That's pretty. We had nothing else to say after that. Yeah.
Such a lame mic drop onto a soft couch. So rock and roll.
I don't know if any of you guys were around in the mid-90s in Atlanta. It was on fire. I was in a band called the Tender Idols, which I think a couple of you guys are here. Stand up. Where are you at?
Ian.
I
know he's
Ian?
here.
Oh, Danny Howes, right here.
Yo!
I started producing because I heard Butch was producing, to be honest with you. I heard him doing it. And Leslie Fram put our band on the radio as well and gave us our first start into an industry. And it was the same kind of thing that happened for us. But I actually learned my craft from these guys sitting over here at this table. Had I not been in that band, I wouldn't know how to put a song together, or arrange a song, or figure out this is too long, or we need a bridge, or whatever it was. I actually learned the craft from these guys. And we got signed, and we worked with producers. And when we went out to fly out and work with producers, I watched them work, and I thought, man, this is the life. Wait a minute, you get to go home every night? You get budgets to go out and eat and hang out in hotels and drink, and this is the life for me. So that's when I switched from being an artist to started thinking about making records. But Atlanta was a really great scene back in the mid '90s, and really thanks to Leslie Fram, who's now at CMT. Continuing to kick butt. I think we have an opportunity. We're here because of her. Yeah, absolutely. So we're really here because of her. But seeing you start to make records, have success with it, I thought, man, there maybe is a chance to do this thing. And I wanted to get serious and be able to afford to live. And I just met my wife Lydia, who's somewhere here tonight. I wanted to go home and be able to pay the rent, So.
Well, and one of the fascinating things about producing records, that being said, I felt the same way, was we, as artists, sometimes sadly in this business, it's so fleeting, and you get one shot,
That's
you get
it,
one chance. One record, and a lot of times they're back, making donuts, and it's like, that sucks. But the reality of it is if you want to keep having a shot after shot after shot, but still love making music, producing is a pretty good alternative to that, because it's almost like it's a new birth every time. You know, you're getting to make a record with a new artist every month or week or.
It's really like being a band, a new band every 6 to 8 months. You know.
Yeah.
You're always changing. You're always working with a new artist and getting inspired yourself from.
Which is great too, because you don't have to worry about sticking to one sound or thing.
Yeah.
When you're behind the console, you can indulge in all of your influences, which I find one of the most amazing parts of it is because we all grew up on so many different kinds of music.
Yeah.
You and I both, and. You know, loving rock and roll and loving punk and loving metal and loving new wave and you know, Americana and blues. It's hard to be an artist and be taken seriously if you make one record to the next, those jumping genres. But as a producer, I know as a role model like Rick Rubin is one of my favorites because he's not a technical guy. He doesn't necessarily sit behind the console and EQ things and work all the knobs and faders. But he's so
a spiritual advisor. That guy.
He's a good.
I actually learned a trick from Rick Rubin, which I'll share with you now. Years ago, I won't mention the band. When I was living in Los Angeles, somebody worked with Rick Rubin on a record at the time. They said, you know, I asked him how was working with Rick, and they said Rick came in and he gave him a couple words of advice, and they said that he was in the studio and they were recording what they thought was the best master take ever. They were all excited about it. They're all high-fiving each other. And like, Rick, what do you think? And Rick goes like this. That's Rick Rubin. And I think that's so profound. And I stole that whole thing from him. I think it's great. You know, it's literally, you know, a lot of times hot and cold, you know, good or bad. And I love that he had never had a filter. And I love that about him. And I think both of us admire him tremendously because of that, you know.
And he's infamous for coming in every so often. Yeah. For the record, not every day.
But it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
But he comes in and he's listening for the big picture, which I think is invaluable when you're making a record. It's not about like spending 7 days getting the ultimate kick drum sound, because a kick drum sound ain't going to change a kid's life when he hears it. It's going to be like the song is going to matter. And he'll come in and go, you know, it's not right. And he doesn't even know how to say. You'd figure how probably giant his mattress is full of money he sleeps on that he would be able to say what the fucking problem is with the song. But
instead of adjusting the sleep rest, he's just like filling the pillows up. Yeah.
He just comes in and hears it, and you know he's happy when he says, "Daddy smells a new high dive." You know.
I think he maybe runs it past his harem. I think he has a harem, right? That's what I've heard. I don't know. I love it. He's got all the myths and all the talent.
Flies in on the magic carpet, Lotus style. It is great.
We should bring up one of our heroes. I know we're going off course completely, but one of my heroes growing up was Brendan O'Brien, being here in Atlanta. Atlanta's own. I don't know if you guys are fans. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Brendan. Huge fan.
Huge.
And I think I worked at a place called Tree Sound here in Atlanta, Norcross. But I had to run an errand one day over to Tree Sound.
You ran a harem?
Yeah, harem over there at Tree Sound.
Sorry, I can't hear a musician.
That's all right. But I had to run an errand over there one day, and I remember Mike Clark, who's passed away now, who used to own Tree Sound here, absolute legend in the industry. He would show me everything Brendan did. He's like, you see that EQ, boy? That's what Brendan does on the kick drum. You see that? That's what he does on this. I remember that making a huge impression on me starting to make records, because I wanted to be like Brendan O'Brien and copy everything he did. And Brendan worked really fast, so I love working really fast because Brendan worked fast.
Spontaneity in the moment.
Yeah. But I think, you know, in Atlanta at that time, I mean, I think we're here because of all these impressions that were made around us in this scene back in the 90s, you know?
Well, he had a knack, and this is another thing that's a tip to the hat for you that I've always told people about Dave, because now that Dave is Mr. Fancy Pants Grammy nominated and winning producer.
Two.
I know. It's your turn to drop the mic.
Okay, where's the other mic? I know that we have a backup mic.
Yeah, a dummy mic. Yeah.
Check two. No,
Make the noise when it hits. No. I tell people this all the time and I think Brendan, one of his strong suits, not only just being, he was a great engineer, so he came from the opposite end of that, where ironically.
Yeah, but number one, he was a great musician, and that's why he was a great guitar player, so I stole everything from him. I was like, well, shit, I can play guitar, I guess I can make records too.
Right, he's an incredible musician, and the irony is he was Rick's engineer. He was Rick Rubin's engineer on the Blood Sugar Sex Magic record for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's a lot of words in a row.
I feel uncomfortable saying that together too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had some pretty questionable titles. But he definitely, that was a special record when you heard it sonically. You're like, "Whoa, this is exciting. What's going on here?" So Rick had a knack for finding talent and surrounding himself with amazing people and talent and musicians. And I've said that about you because I think that a big part of the job is just being able to do the job that's something we call A&R people, which I say stands for alcohol and restaurants, because that's pretty much what they're good at taking care of these days.
It's true.
But you can quote me on that.
You're right.
But it's also why there's no A&R guys left, because we realize that their job is pretty much not needed anymore. Because they come in at the end of the day and go like, could you IQ the snare a little bit for me?
I had a guy ask me to tune the cymbals one time.
Oh,
that was the best. A rock and roll band, and we're mix. He's like, "Can you tune the cymbals?" I love everything about the mix.
My favorite A&R thing is like when they say, when you send them a rough mix and say, "This is rough, it's not mixed, so levels are all over the place." It'll be mixed later, so everything will be, sonically in its right volume, and then they come back and go, "Oh man, I just don't know about that level of the snare drum."
You know it. You know the truth.
But the thing is with producers, it started out in the business. They were the guys behind the record industry. They were the guys running the record labels.
Well, George Martin, who passed away recently,
right.
he's the perfect producer.
Right.
Because not only was an executive, he was the A&R, and he signed the band, he produced the band, he found the material, wrote stuff, composed stuff for the band. He's a perfect, my mind, my perfect idol.
And it shows, and I'm gonna blow you up because it shows in your work, because I think the records, like, it's funny, in the last 3 or 4 years, I'll have a favorite new record, and I'll realize that you did it.
Shit.
And it makes me happy because it makes me happy. But yeah, double drop. It makes me happy because you've been able to, you can find the talent. You've got good ears for that, and that's half the battle. That's half the job. Stick a great singer and songwriter in front of a microphone, just don't mess it up.
Yeah.
Record it,
Well, I can tell you that these artists like Sturgill Simpson is a great example. When I did his record, I sent it to everybody, and nobody bid on it. Nobody bid on it. And I think a lot of producing or making records is believing so much in your artist that you're willing to just blindly not listen to anybody. Mm-hmm. And I've been real fortunate to be under the radar for a lot of years and make these records for no other intention except for to make a piece of work that we were really proud of. Mm-hmm. When we go in the studio, we make these records to make ourselves laugh and to make ourselves enjoy them. We don't make them for anybody. And I'm happy that people bought the records, but we didn't make them for anybody.
Well, a lot of times the best records are the ones you're making without a record company involved, a budget. There's no budget. You're doing it as a labor of love.
Yeah.
Because nobody would touch it. And then you make this beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you make this beautiful record for somebody, and it's full of all the right things because people didn't come in overanalyzing it to death and saying IQ the snare. They're like, you definitely did it for all the right reasons. And I think you've gotten to do a lot of those records, and I'm really excited.
Nobody cared. That's why I got to do all those records. Nobody cared at all about it. But I think we're in a really interesting time in music. I mean, I'm in Nashville. Butch is in LA and Nashville now. And it's a really wonderful time where all these independent artists are selling a shitload of records. And they're defeating every single check you had to make 2 or 3 years ago and making these careers and selling records despite what anybody says. And now, thank God, major labels, are paying attention, and they're actually gravitating toward these really organic records, these really, honest records that are made for the only intent of art. And I think we're in a really interesting time where you can have a super pop record that sells a lot of records, but then you can have a super organic artist that also sells a lot of records. I think we're back in the time of maybe the early 70s with album cycles, maybe the time of Pink Floyd having a Dark Side of the Moon or whatever. I think we're at that point again. Thank God.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
or Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life. It's like we're at that point right now where all those things are valid.
And all genres too.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what. I mean, you love him or hate him. I don't know how he's a polarizing artist, but like even Mac, I didn't say him yet.
Okay.
But
I thought it was somebody I didn't know about. I'm not smart.
He's a great guy, right?
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah. No, like Macklemore, like
I've been a
he
big
came
fan,
out with that
big
record,
fan.
that record, The Heist or whatever I think it was called. But that record came out, and I remember seeing it on iTunes at #1 the week it came out. And of course, I was one of many people who were like, "Who is this?" Didn't even have to make a mark, you know, in the industry. He had that many fans already, and it was just already set in place. And it was, you know, it was good material. But by the time I was scrolling down listening to it, I got to this song called Jimmy Iovine, which I don't know if you guys know who Jimmy Iovine is. You probably do. I think he's probably been on
The Idol, American Idol.
American
right?
Idol a few times.
The Idol. That's how much I watch TV. Have you seen The Idol?
He's got his like
Butch?
beats around his neck. But I just thought that was amazing that he wrote this entire song dedicated to bashing
Who
the
turned him
president
down.
of a label who, turned them down. And I was just like, this is ballsy, and it's #1 on iTunes. This is incredible. It's a big statement, you know. But that kind of sums up what we're talking about, though. Is it's the Wild West out there again, and I love it.
It's the Wild West, but I feel like major labels are embracing the Wild West. I see it.
They have to.
I have an imprint with Elektra Records in Atlantic. Those guys, I mean, if you look at the history of Atlantic Records, they had Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin and Led Zeppelin and AC/DC, and they want to have whatever that equivalent is now, these honest records and honest artists. So you're seeing that. I'm seeing it in Nashville with all the other major labels. They're all looking, you know, like Warner Music in Nashville has Brandy Clark. You know, Universal has Chris Stapleton. You know, Mercury has Chris Stapleton. You see this honesty reverting back, and I think it's a really beautiful time. If you guys make records, I don't think you should listen to anybody when you make a record. Make it for yourself, make it selfishly, make art, let everything else fall where it falls, you know? We're at that time right now.
Applause.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Butch, what's your favorite color?
What?
What's your favorite color?
I need to ask you a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So tell everybody here then about like what, you know, as far as like why you moved, because we both did the same thing. We had to move out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
We had to go to LA for a little bit, and then you eventually settled on going to Nashville.
Well, we had this conversation backstage. There's a gentleman who talked to us backstage, and he was asking us questions about Georgia music, and it broke my heart. I think I kind of maybe went deep on it, but I think when we started out in bands and we're trying to have careers, we had to move somewhere else to have a career. And it breaks my heart because we have so much talent here in Georgia. We have Otis Redding, we have James Brown, we have Little Richard, we have, you know, just so much incredible talent here in our backyard. And it's such a shame that we had to move. And so what we were talking about is like, if we can find a way, and any of you guys have any idea how to do it, let's make sure the next generation of Georgia artists don't have to leave. You know, whatever we can do, you know. Because I'm really proud. I was born in Savannah, Georgia, and moved to Atlanta in high school. Went here to high school in Atlanta and started my career here in Atlanta. And it was a really giving, beautiful thing. You know, people like Paul Diaz. I don't know if you guys know him, Owns Tree Sound Atlanta.
Paul.
He's a big prop. I mean, he gave me a space when I didn't even know how to produce a record at that point. He just blindly believed in letting me in there to start making records. And Danny Howells and Ian Weber and Nicole Jervix, who was a booker around town. All these people gave me big chances here, but I felt like to continue a career, we're really making records per se. I had to move to Los Angeles, and it wasn't until I got in Los Angeles. I remember leaving and getting in LA, and I was there for a few years, and I heard this song by Jason Isbell, and it's a song he had in his band called Drive By Truckers called Outfit. I don't know if you guys ever heard that song. If you haven't heard it, go buy his record. He's brilliant, and it's all about the Southeastern, growing up in the Southeast, and the mannerisms and the ways and the lifestyle. And I heard this song and I got so homesick. When I was a kid, I hated Black Eyed Peas, and I hated greens, and I hated okra, and I hated, you know, a lot of the stuff that we grew up in the South. I was a kid, I wanted pizza, you know, pizza Nintendo. I wanted anything but how we grew up here. And all of a sudden it all came coming back, like everything that's special about the music that we grew up with. You know, I think I grew up Pentecostal in Savannah, and that music in the church, the hymnals and all that stuff, it all came back to me like rushing. It was almost like I got hit in the head with religion or something. And it's not about God, it was about the music and the culture and the history. I got really hit with it, and I got really sad about why I was in LA, you know, and I wound up moving to Nashville because Nashville's kind of the next music, you know, kind of epicenter right now, and so I wound up there, and when I was there, I really connected with my Southern roots and started getting the music I never appreciated growing up. But we got to find a way here in Georgia to make people not move, because I'm sad that I moved, you know.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be in Nashville, I'm glad to be a part of it, but it sucks that we couldn't have stayed here, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, it was the same situation for me because being a little bit different backgrounds, you and I, where we ended up producing-wise, I hit this weird streak of making pop records. You know, like I don't know, I took a chance and worked with Avril Lavigne on something, and it was, and co-wrote it and then produced it, and it was a #1 hit, and then all of a sudden, there was a big demand for that, and I didn't even, if you would have asked me 2 years before that if I was ever going to make pop records for people, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Yeah, but there's a lot of great pop records though. I mean, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones are pop bands.
Of course.
That's where you come from.
And coming up on pop, it made sense, but there was also at the time, in Atlanta, there was no market for, people just would not come here to make records in that category, like as far as like the pop and pop rock stuff. There was lots of R&B and hip hop, which is, you know, we kill it here for that, and it's incredible. But for what I was getting called to do, it was putting me on a plane every other day for LA, and I had to go to LA to do it. So I was the same thing. I was kind of forced at the hand if I wanted to have a career at this, to move out to LA. But then the beauty of it is who would have thought in a million years that if you ever wanted to be an actor, that you could do it here. You know,
can somebody verify this? I told Butch backstage, I heard Baywatch is filming in Tybee Island, Savannah. Is that true?
I hope so.
I can't believe that.
That's amazing.
Right in my old backyard. That's
but
incredible.
see, like, I mean, you know, until now.
Maybe we should quit music and be on Baywatch. What do you think? I think we should.
What makes you think I haven't already been on it?
You'd be a good Hasselhoff, but you're gonna have to fix that gold tooth of yours, because you know.
Oh God, Hasselhoff now, not then. But yeah, that's kind of, you know, that's the beauty of time changing, and the way that Atlanta in particular has just blossomed into being this entertainment mecca now for all things.
You want me to tell you what I think about is great about Georgia? We got more soul than everybody else. That's all I'm saying. Oh shit. It's true though, isn't it?
It's true. Well, that's the question.
I just broke somebody's mic.
That was incredible. But that's the question that we got asked backstage about something about the difference in making records in Georgia and making them in LA is, you know, LA, with all due respect, it's a great place and there's amazing music coming out of there, but a lot of times it's just people that have just moved there from somewhere else, and they're just trying to perfect perfect the music from another region. There's so many, there's 20 Southern rock bands on every corner in Los Angeles, which is geographically
Everybody looks
nuts.
like they're Leonard Skinner out in LA
I know,
right now.
I know,
True.
which is hilarious because this is kind of where it all started down here. So
Capricorn Records, making Georgia, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So Butch, I'm gonna hijack this. Tell me about what it's like to be a performer and a producer at the same time. How do you manage that?
I think the beauty of having both is I got really burned out. My band had been touring for about, 11 or 12 years straight, doing about 200 shows a year. So I slept in a million vans, a million weird fans' basements, and everything you could imagine, to the point where when our band finally had a little taste of success and had some good luck and good fortune, we were burnt out. We were very burnt out, to the point where we needed to break up the band and kind of just all step back. And I never got a chance to make records as much because of the necessity of having to be on the road all the time. And so that afforded me the luxury of stepping back and doing that. And that's when, around that same time, I started getting calls to go in and try to write songs for people. Like, it was like Pink and Katy Perry and Avril and Fall Out Boy and a couple others at that time. And I thought, I think I could do this. I think I can do it. I just need to put the the performing thing on ice for a minute, go in here and perfect a little bit of this craft and see. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, was just having that distance from just thinking that I was just going to always be on a stage the rest of my life. And it made me miss it after I, stayed in the studio making records for a while. It made me miss being back on stage and playing music for people and making my own records. And so now I just try to carefully balance it as much as I can. I have a family at home, and I love them dearly, and it's, people always wonder how you can pull off doing that and being successful at all three. And it's really just I space it out. It's time management. I'll do 3 or 4 months touring on the road, and then I'll come back and I'll make records for other people for 3 or 4 months. And it just always feels like the first date. You try to just always make it feel like that, and I think that's the balance is key.
That's tough. You got to teach me about that. I don't know how to do it.
Well, we both came from playing in bands, so I mean.
I get to live it out a little bit now. I'm playing guitar live for the first time, and when did we stop playing? 90.
A couple years ago.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, I started doing it again recently. I had an artist I produced, Chris Stapleton, who I play on a lot of the records.
So good.
And so I kind of get that out a lot of times playing guitar on the records. And he asked me if I wanted to play out with him when he did his CD release, and I had a blast. And every time he did something cool, he'd ask me to come out. So now I go out and go on tour, every once in a while with him, and it's like getting that out again. And I miss that tremendously. But at the same time, I like to sleep in my own bed. It's a good bed.
And that's another interesting thing to talk about too, though, is playing on other artists' records that you're producing, because not a lot of producers are always necessarily.
Proficient enough?
Or musicians even. You don't have to be. You can just be like Rick Rubin or be an incredible visionary or whatever. But we both come from tinkering on multiple instruments, and to me that is part of the fun, is getting in there and being able to indulge in that when they want you to. But it's important not to overstep your welcome, I think, too, when you're working with an artist.
You got to read the room every time if you're welcome in there to do it or not. There's a producer I love called Jimmy Miller. Jimmy Miller produced the best Rolling Stones records, from Let It Bleed to Exile on Main Street. And Jimmy Miller was a musician, he was a drummer. And he played on these records. He would go in the room and play percussion. He would go in the room, he played drums on Happy by the Rolling Stones. He played drums on You Can't Always Get What You Want. And I approach records like that. I go in there and it's kind of like, if there's a part needed, if the guitar player is playing electric and there needs to be acoustic part, I'll go play the acoustic. Just to get the take. I hate overdubs. I hate them. I think they're necessary, but I hate them. So I try to get as many people going down in one room together at the same time. And I copy that from all my heroes, whether it be in Nashville, from Owen Bradley to Chet Atkins, or Los Angeles, back in the 60s with the A-Team, or Glenn Johns producing rock and roll records in the 70s, or whatever it is. I steal everything from those guys, but I think there's something happens when you have humans interacting with humans that can never be duplicated when you start piecing a record together. When you do the drums, and you do the bass, and you do the guitar, and you do the singing, it never feels the same. And I love the danger. I think you may have a comment on this. I have a comment about vinyl records.
About what?
About vinyl records. It's probably going to make everybody mad that I say this. I don't really give a shit about vinyl records. I should be the guy who advocates vinyl records. See, it's going to piss somebody off already. I'll tell you why. I actually think they sound good. I think they sound great. I think they do sound better than CD. But it's not the vinyl medium I think people are attracted to. I think people are attracted to the fact when these records were made, human beings had to interact. They had to make records together in one room. They had to, the singer had to go down with the band. They had to be proficient players to be in the studio. They had to be a proficient singer that could actually sing, not needing auto-tune in the studio. And I think people are really attracted to the humanity on those records. And that's what I look for when I make records, is to make records with artists that are talented enough to pull that off.
And that's an incredible statement, because we came from making records, probably you and I both, back when
the 90s had a loop on everything. I remember being traumatized. You had to have a loop.
Right.
I remember we were making our record, and we had a dude dedicated to making loops on the side. We never had a loop in our band. It's like, what the hell is the purpose of a loop on rock and roll band? I don't get it. I still don't get it.
But it's really cool to be able to come up, though, making records on tape, and if we wanted to edit something, edit a section of the song out, it wasn't there was no computers to do it then in 5 seconds or 1 second.
Butch, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm 29 years old, and I don't remember these days of this fictitious tape.
See, I'm trying to make him go down with my ship here. We're old.
You were the older one between us, yeah.
But coming up making records like that, like where you were on tape and you had to like have like you had to have a band in the room making music that was great, or else you couldn't fix it. You know, it had to be great going in. And I think that it's cool that you get to make records like that.
Everybody can. It's not me. Everybody can do it.
I know. Well,
it's very simple. Good song, great talent, and a studio. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's not math. You know?
And I love that that's the way you're making all of those records happen, because it wasn't. There was no records like on the radio, especially when that was the thing in the last 10 years that were a band in a room playing. It was definitely, and I know this. I know there are. And that's what's great about it. Like. But I had to go like for a minute outside that world and go into the pop world where I had A&R guys actually asking me, they were telling me, wait, did you record real drums on this? Like they were kind of disgusted looking. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. And they're like, is that like guitars that are like mic'd up?
I don't know if you guys know, Butch is one of the best guitar players on the planet. If you've heard him play, he's bad to the bone.
Well, thanks. It's more like just, I really love real instruments, and I like to put them on records that even if the record sounds like a pop, shiny, polished record, it's nice actually having real people playing on them. And that's something that's a lost art until now, I think. It's making a resurgence, you know, because for a while, like I said, it was the alcohol and restaurants guy saying, you know, why are you bothering with having a real drummer play on this? And I would just be like, well, I don't know, because it makes my soul feel good when I'm in the studio doing it. I mean, I realize there's a place for it, though, for technology. And that's probably a very important conversation we should have about technology being a driving force with what is in modern popular music. I mean, you can make a hit song with a sample of just like a kick and a snare and a vocal these days if the song is good enough. So I think it just depends on how you want to approach it. If you're getting into this line of work of wanting to be a producer, is most importantly, and you said this, I'm regurgitating, it is the song. Because I think you could take like that Lord track that blew up, you know, I think you could take that song and it could have been done with an orchestra and a full band and still probably been a hit because it was such a cool song. It's a good song. The Adele song, you know, the Hello, there's nothing to the track, you know. It's literally like...
It's pure talent.
It's just talent, yeah. And that always wins.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We have a lot in this room tonight, I'm sure.
Let's hear some
No
people
claps?
sing.
No talent in this room?
You stand up and sing.
I love it when somebody gives me, if it is a demo, I love it when it's on an iPhone and it's them playing with an acoustic guitar, because I love to be able to collaborate on that and kind of realize the track. You know, I think when somebody's went to great detail of making a demo and doing the drum track, they're used to that beat, and they've done this little weird noise in the third verse that happens one time, and they're so used to hearing that. I think for me as a producer, it's evil, and I hate it. And I think there's no room for interpretation. I love it when somebody keeps something really raw. Also, for the second reason, I think when an artist performs a song for the very first time on tape, that's the best they're ever going to perform it, and I hate to miss that. If they've done it on a demo and they've you know, went to professional studios and performed it on a mic, I've missed the magic. I'm too late to the game. Maybe we change it, but we've missed that initial excitement, because I know what happens when people make fully realized demos. They listen to them over and over and over again.
Yeah, demo.
So they're over the song. And when a band has written a song and then they go on tour and they start playing it on tour for 6 months, they're on to something else. I think, and I'm guilty as a songwriter as well, the newest song you write is always your best song.
To you, yes.
To you, always. And so I think you lose a lot when you demo a song a ton or go into great detail before you go in the studio. I think you've missed the magic, and I think it's gone. And often I've done records in the past where somebody has done these great demos, and I hear it, I'm like, damn, I don't know what I could do with that.
That's a big problem, actually.
I'll use the demo and go from there, because I know for a fact that I wasn't there for the moment when the magic happened, and I hate that. I love
big problem,
raw. I love it when somebody comes to me with a verse and a chorus, and that's it, and we finish the rest together. That's my favorite records to make. So.
And I will say this, I'll add in that the only reason I think, and I love it too. I don't do demos for my own stuff.
Hate 'em.
I don't do demos for other people. It's like you go in, we can make the song in a day, and then it's
Easy.
the record. And
Yeah.
it sounds incredible, and it's great, and you either missed it or you hit it.
Yeah.
And if you missed it, you try again another day. But the one thing that I would say is encouraging about having people do demos is only to explore the recording craft and the fact that it might be like we don't want to get demos personally from people
No.
we're working on because we want to hear the song and it's in the genesis that it should be the initial thing. But I know when I was learning how to do songs, it was like everybody wanted me to demo things because that was just the way it was in the 90s. You know, everybody wanted a demo, fully realized.
I think you're doing a disservice giving somebody a demo because you say you're giving, this is a demo, this is just a demo, this is what it's going to be great.
If you call it
Nobody
a demo, it is a
believes you.
demo. If you call it a
But
master,
nobody
it's a
believes
master.
you. You're kind of cut off. You only have, it's like that deodorant commercial. You only have one chance to make a first impression. And a bad demo, even
Yeah.
a good demo, you may spoil it.
Well,
so.
and the funny thing is and this is not, I'm not tooting my own horn, but this is, if anybody does want to like make their demos just to flesh out whether or not producing is something that they
That's valid.
are good at, then it's great. Because what happened for me is I was making these demos and then turning them in and trying to get a producer to, whenever we finally had a budget and a producer, no one would work with it because they kept telling everybody, what am I going to do with that? It sounds done, you know. So
Yeah.
I was like, you know, I thought I knew what I'm doing. I actually can make these records, so I'm going to quit calling these demos. And when that song, Leslie Fram heard it, that was literally the drums on 2 tracks. It was like 10 tracks. It was very small. And I thought I was going to have to go re-record it for real whenever it got heard. And she started playing that, which was the demo. And then I realized, oh, there is no demo, you know? And that's happened many, many cases for many artists where the original recording of it that was meant to be a demo became a massive song for them. And you just have to really think of it as an
Adele
exercise.
thing, right? Isn't the big song
The demo.
It was the demo, and they chased it. They had a bunch of producers go at it and try to make the record for 6-7 months, and they wound up using the demo.
Right.
But it's great. She had it captured. The point being is that if you're going to do something, do it right the first time. Don't prepare to do it.
I think
know that sounds
Bohemian
terrible,
Rhapsody
terrible
was
advice.
the demo. I'm just kidding. That'd be amazing. Sorry, we just threw this together really quick. I got a chance to, work with some artists that had big records, and then they're doing their next record, and they've done several. And then you get in there, and this goes back to the beginning of the conversation we had about all eyes on it. And that makes the recording process like so not fun because there's 15 cooks in the kitchen, there's 17 stylists, and
they want a double of the hit they had before.
And then they all just want whatever is hot that minute. Whereas you get like a new artist that has there's no preconception, no preconceived notion on them at all, and the world is your oyster. You can just kind of start, from scratch with it, and you get this awesome thing that you're not pressured in to always chasing the hit. And that's one thing that does happen that becomes a drag, especially in the pop world when you're making records for people, is chasing their last big song. And they will overanalyze it to death to the point where the song just sounds exactly like part 2 of whatever they just did. Or, if I had $1 for every time somebody in our guy said, "Can you make it sound more Adele?" And it's like, that to me is like,
Nobody ever asked me those things.
I know. Why am I looking at you? They didn't say that to Stapleton. But I'm saying, like, definitely in the pop world, that was a thing. And so I would spend just an entire year making records for like undiscovered artists, and sometimes those records never see the light of day, but it doesn't matter because I'm so proud of those records, and they didn't take 7 years off my life to make. So.
To me, I agree with what you said. To me, finding a new artist is the most fun. I mean, I chase things down. When I hear somebody with talent, I chase it. I heard this guy, Jason Isbell, years ago in California, and literally found a way to work with him. I chased the dragon until I finally caught up with him to make a record. I heard Chris Stapleton, this band I work with in California called Rival Sons. The singer's one of the best singers I've ever heard in that band, and he played me Chris Stapleton and his old band, Steel Drivers, coming through his cell phone.
Yes.
And when I heard that voice, I was like, man, I gotta find a way. So I've kind of, in a lot of ways, chased dragons. I find somebody who's badass and try to figure out how to get to them. And these were, at the time, really, kind of unknown artists. Isbell had a career going on, but I tried my hardest to chase people I think are really talented down. And I always have the most fun when it's a brand new artist. I mean, I've not really had the luxury to work with, the gigantic artists on their second record to follow up. Nobody calls me for hits, which I think is really a great place to be.
I think that's great that they don't have to call you for that. But
I love it when somebody comes in and they're new and they're so excited about it, and you can be influential in their life. I love that. I work really weird. When I go in to make a record, I think about the singer first. So I'm only listening to the singer.
So does the singer.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. What do they call LSD, lead singer disease? Most all of them had it. No, I think about the singer first because I think people listen to singers first. I really do. I think I usually know what it's to take based on the vocal. I'm always listening for the vocal, and I make singers cut with the band live every time. Even if we don't keep it, I'm looking for that lead vocal. So I will do comps. It may be 10 takes of a song, but I'll go and find the best verse, and I'll find the best chorus from those comps and put them all together. But I'm always listening to the singer, because when the singer's singing good, that's because the band's playing right.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about, and I started off as drums as a kid, and I'm a musician. I can play about anything, but I can tell you that it ain't about the snare drum sound. It's not about the bass sound. It's not about the guitar sound. It's about the singer, because that's what everybody listens to first. People care about the singer and their emotion and the feel. There's a story that I remember reading really early on when I started to make records. There's a guy, Shel Talmy, and he produced the Kinks. You Really Got Me. It's one of my heroes, and he was talking about when the Kinks cut that song, You Really Got Me. He said they cut it and they got through with it, and everybody's super happy with it. But he's like, I guess Ray Davies of the band said, it's like, I want to make it, this is really crass. He's like, I want to make girls pee their pants when they hear this song instead of just being good. So they cut it again until they got to that feeling where it just felt like you just couldn't control yourself. And so I'm always looking for that. When I hear Otis Redding sing, I've Been Loving You Too Long, or if I hear Little Richard sing, you don't know what you got, but it's got me. Those are the songs, I look for whatever that is, or Traffic, Dear Mr. Fantasy, or Glenn Campbell, Wichita Lineman. I want that in record making, and I think I'm always chasing a dragon, trying to find a song or performance that makes you feel. This intangible thing, like I don't know hit if it hit me in the face. I don't know what a hit is. I really don't. I shouldn't say that, but nobody calls me for hits, so I don't have to worry about that.
It's a beautiful problem.
But it's, I just want that thing that makes your arm hair stand up, and it makes you just want to go, you got to hear this, and that's when I know it's right.
And and a lot of times that is the first take, and that's the thing you have to know. This might be an unfair question for you and I, because we both are very minimal with our
reactive.
Regardless of the production styles,
Yeah.
It's pretty minimal as far as takes, and I like to go for like first and second takes on things all the time. And I'm not a big fan of sitting there and sifting through 40 takes of vocals. It just becomes rocket science, and it's not when you're like comping a syllable by syllable to get like a take.
It's not humanality to me.
Not human, and you know when you have it. And I think the one thing, I got to work on my last record with this guy Ryan Adams, who's one of my favorite songwriters and singers on the planet. And he's also super gifted in the studio, and he was the only guy I could trust. I wrote this record that was all songs about my dad, who had passed away a couple of years ago, and we were very tight, and it was just a very dark period for me, and I didn't feel like I could go in and produce it myself, which was the first time in a long time that I ever felt that way about a record, being able to commandeer the ship. So he was excited about coming in and helping me with it, and he had that same mentality. And his plan, though, was, the way we want to do this is we want to have, I want to not have anybody know the songs. I didn't bring anything to the studio at all. I picked up whatever guitar was in the corner. That was my guitar that I played on that track. Saying, we cut it all live. And the thing is the band had just heard the song for the first time 5 minutes before we started rolling tape. And we hit record. We would kind of get through it with this nervous energy.
It's the nervousness that makes it
great.
Attractive.
And then we wouldn't even know how to end the song, So it would just fall apart at the end, and then Ryan would go, "Oh, that's it," and you'd be like, what? And then that's when you have to start thinking. It's like, it's not about the drummer going, oh, but I flubbed the fill, or I lisped a word, you know, back in the second verse. It's not about that. It literally was about tapping into primal human emotion on the song. And we never did more than 1 to 2 takes of the record, of each song, and we never listened back, not one time.
That's the best thing ever. I always want to get back to that feeling you had when you got together with your friends the first time and played in a garage, when it was loose and it was raw, but you left there going like, kind of feeling electric. I want that in record making.
But I will say, in defense of other genres of music, where I can't imagine that Queen put Bohemian Rhapsody down first take, you know, and I use that song as a reference because it's like 3 different songs actually edited together when they did it, and it took them 3 months to make one song. But it's also one of the greatest fucking songs ever recorded. And because of that, you can hear it. You can hear that. And I think there's a time and place for perfecting something, but there's also enough loose.
It's not hard to perfect it when you're
that great.
When you're that great.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty easy when
and
everybody's
that's
that
the
bad.
thing. Is like, if you're doing 50 takes of a singer because the singer can't sing, no good. That's not fun. But if you're doing, you know, 10 takes of an amazing singer just because you're enjoying listening to them sing through the speakers, keep singing, you know, and I'm okay with that. We'll just keep doing takes. And that's, like, I've worked with Pink on many of her records, and she's one of the best singers I've ever worked with in my life, and she's just always on, and it's just like cigarette in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. Now it's a baby, not a cigarette, but still, like, just, she literally will just like get up there and belt it, all just amazing first take, and I'll just say, oh, sing it again because it was cool. It sounds great. Do it one more time. Let's just do it again, and then I'll get maybe 3 takes, and I'll just say, I don't even know how to comp this because I'll just use one whole take of it.
Yeah. I learned a really actually important lesson on a record I did a few months ago. This guy, Chris Stapleton, when we did Traveler, I learned I learn every time we work with an artist. Every single time I learn something, I pick up something. We had booked that studio. It was a nice studio, RC Studio A in Nashville, and we had a really great engineer, this guy Vance Powell. And it was on a major label. We had a lot of advantages to make the record, and we were burning money. Every hour we're there, the clock is ticking and money's burning. And we would get there at noon, and he'd order food, and we goof off and drink and tell jokes. And about 4 o'clock, we order some more food and drink and
tell
goof
drinks.
off, and just we cut up all day long, and it would be like 9 o'clock at night, and he would go, "I'm ready," and we walk out there and we get 3 masters, and they would be the mixed tracks on the record. So I learned a lot every single time from the artist, and I learned a lot about the right moment and the right time. And Butch does the same thing. There's no, like, inspiration just comes out of the clouds. You can't predict it.
Yeah, you can't schedule creativity.
You can't schedule creativity.
You try to get in and write a song with somebody, that whole co-writing thing, like they do it in Nashville, they do it in LA. Where
they do.
They're on a schedule.
Some people are really good at it.
co-writing.
I'm just not.
I'm not either. I can't sit down and go, oh, I got to come up with some heavy shit right now.
Yeah.
You know?
I was really fortunate. Danny and Ian Weber we were all in a band called the Tender Idols in the 90s, and I really had a platform because our band was doing really well at that time. I had a platform to meet people, and because I was in the band, I had a really, good excuse to say, hey, you want to come to the studio and hang out and work. I worked really hard in building, what we had going together to be in a position to go in the studio with people and have people respect my opinion. I think had I not been in that band, it would have been really hard to convince anybody to go in the studio. So I think you got to work on your craft, whether it's being an artist or being a writer, and get some respect, and then find ways to draw people into the studio.
I agree. And I think one of the most important things I tell people about it is just have good people skills. Yeah. Just have good social skills.
Number one is hang.
So many people learn way too much technical shit when they're wanting to produce, so much that they've never left their bedroom for years. And then they have to get in a room with all these dynamic personalities and people with insecurities themselves, because you're in there like letting it all out. And most artists are extremely nervous and extremely guarded when you're making a record. And the last thing you need to do is have them walk in and go like, nice shirt, or just make them feel bad about the song even, you just need to learn how to talk to people normal. Learn how to like deal with them and get into their emotions and give them confidence, because without their confidence, they'll never make a great record, no matter what giant fancy studio with full of great gear.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
y'all.
much.
ATL.
Thanks to all of our sponsors once again. We thank you for being here.